Hello, everybody. I'm Dagan McDowell. Joining me are my co-hosts, Taylor Riggs, Brian Brenberg, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for the whole hour, SideKick Operators President Chris Valletta. And he advises very founders in the very businesses that President Trump is trying to bring back to the United States. So we're anxious to talk to Chris. This morning, two of the biggest voices in money and management and business, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, sitting down with our very own Maria Bartiromo, offering very different views on the economy on Fox Business. But let's focus on business and the economy, Chris. What are you hearing from the people, the very founders of businesses, broadly speaking, that you're talking to about what the White House is doing?
Well, I mean, real leadership is when you find solutions that strengthen both the economy and the people behind it, right? So this tariff tug of war is a test of economic resilience. And I think what's unique about this is what we're hearing is, our greatest threat is not China. Our greatest threat is our own impatience. And, China's really good at playing the long game, really good. And, my college football coach was one of the best leaders I ever met. He used to tell us that, leadership is when you don't point fingers, you use your thumbs. And so we've got to start looking inward here. We get mad when our Amazon packages don't show up in an hour. Okay, we are so impatient, and the pendulum just swings so far in either direction. And so what we have to do is, President Trump is convinced that these tariffs are going to bring, manufacturing back to the United States. We're going to reindustrialize the United States. We're going to bring a resurgence back to the U.S. And that's fantastic. We need it, right? But with that is some things that we have to start thinking about. There's going to be a lot of jobs that come with that, which we're already facing a major deficit in skilled trades workers in the U.S. as it relates to power, energy, water, infrastructure in the United States, to the tune of 1 million workers. Deloitte did a study that said we need 1 million new skilled trades jobs by the year 2030, or it's $1 trillion hit to our GDP. Compound that with a resurgence in U.S. manufacturing and distribution, and it's a major impact. And so we need to invest not only in the long game of vocational schools and skilled trades education, but we've got to start thinking about short term. How do we solve that labor gap? And by the way, automation, robots, sure, yeah, that's good, but robots break down, and robots aren't going to be the ones that do all of the work. We need to fill the labor gap that's coming into the United States if that is the case. We've got to focus there as well. One comment I will make on the Dimon interview, which I thought was fantastic as well, I think we need more of that sort of pragmatic, simple discussion, if you can call it that, out of the administration. FDR had fireside chats. Reagan had Mornings with America. I think we live in such a soundbite society. We do need more of this podcast structure from the administration in a distilled down approach. I talk to founders of businesses every single day who need sort of simple vocabulary, simple explanations to understand what's happening. It instills confidence in the system that I think will bring a level of clarity to the overall structure, and in so doing, help a further understanding of where we are.
And Dimon said Scott Bessent should take the lead on this because he is the calmest voice amongst all the voices that we have been hearing.
You remind me when they put remember when they put the Doge guys out there, and that was Brett Baer? Yep. Those guys were so good because all they did is just talk plain facts to you. More of that, please. I hear you.
Well, and Chris, I want to come to you on that after Brian about the impact on people, right, and small businesses and financing costs. But Brian, quickly weigh into that. Chris, sorry, less than a minute.
Well, fiscal responsibility isn't just good policy. It's a moral obligation to the American people, right? I mean, our fiscal 24 deficit of nearly $2 trillion. We were just talking about our kids in the break. I've got 12 and 10-year-old boys. One of them happens to love math, right? I don't even know how to explain these numbers to my kids. The strain we're putting on our future generations and on our kids, it is so unbelievably incredible to comprehend. And I think What made America great is that not everyone ends up in the same place, but everybody has the opportunity to do so. And I think the backbone of our economy is it's not speculative trading, but it's hardworking Americans building infrastructure and legacy businesses. That's where our focus needs to be. We've got to stop making these short-term politically driven decisions and start making longer-term infrastructure legacy building decisions as a country.
Welcome back. President Trump is flipping the switch back to coal, signing an executive order aimed at reviving the coal industry. The U.S. needs energy, and a lot of it, in part, to power the race to AI dominance. Kelly Saberi, it seems like such a waste of resources, pardon the pun, to close these plants and then bring them back. We need to find a way to have sustainable energy in this country, and Trump is trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the overall infrastructure in the United States is in hospice, particularly energy. Most of the components of our infrastructure date back to the mid-20th century. I mean, it's pretty bad. And around energy, all while demand is just absolutely skyrocketing, right? We talked about data centers and crypto mining. You've got, electric vehicles surging, and coal, I think, today contributes about 16% of energy production in the United States, down from about 50% at the turn of the century. We need an all-hands-on-deck approach, when it comes to energy production. My home state of Texas, in 2021, we had a freeze that impacted the state, shut down the energy grid completely. It cost the state upwards of $300 billion in losses. And now, today, the energy demand in that state alone, just given the influx of businesses and population growth, the demand for energy is more than double what it was at that point. It's absolutely incredible. It's why we are extremely interested in the infrastructure development in Texas and throughout the country around power and water and transportation and logistics, all of the infrastructure. But in energy, it's things like continuous power, backup power generation, really everything around it. And not just the installation of that equipment, but also the servicing of that equipment, right? This gets people to work. This gets the infrastructure moving. That's where the economy is built. That's where our security and prosperity is
built. And yesterday, Brian, I thought of...
Americans are still up for shopping for the holidays. Easter spending holding strong, even as consumers grapple with the lingering Biden-era inflation and looming tariffs. $23.6 billion. That's how much Americans are expected to spend on Easter staples. We're not giving up the basket, the ham, or the chocolate bunny. Thank goodness. Just yet. Taylor, are you spending? Chris, I get
with
a lot
dye, with red dye.
I want a lot of red dye in my cake. Chris, I get a lot of flack on this set for my eating habits, but it's Easter. And you got to double down and celebrate. But the bigger question is consumers navigating all this and business navigating all this. This environment right now. What do you see from your vantage point?
I think we cannot lose sight of what's most important: faith and family.
Yes,
amen. And that is what's most important. And I think there's a big lesson here for all of us in this. And whether it's businesses or our family, we say at our company SideKick all the time, it's people before profits. And I think the lesson here is whether it's business or our family, that you celebrate with purpose rather than excess. And I think that's the big lesson about Easter. I think that's the lesson we're seeing here.
That's probably, Jackie, a good way to put sort of how people are going to be thinking about their spending. And if we see price increases, it's sort of like, what do you value? What do you want to spend your money on? And what are you willing to do without?
Stuff from them. But Chris, I think you had a really good point. This sort of refocuses your decision-making on what matters. So you could have a couple eggs or no eggs, but the point is, what's the family time? It doesn't mean we still can't have nice things, but in this period when we're reevaluating, maybe we don't get like all the eggs, but you get more family time. Purpose.
Scott,
I like it.
Scott, way to do it. You guys, what's your candy?
Giant chocolate bunny.
Like solid chocolate? Solid chocolate or hollow?
No.
Solid.
When I was a kid,
like Taylor size or Brian size?
No, well, when I was a kid, they would get me a Taylor size bunny, and I was little, so the bunny was bigger than me.
Chris, real quick.
Charleston chews.
Oh my gosh, I did not have that on my bingo card. That is very good.
Old school.
Hey, Chris, thanks for being with us.
Thank
Great
you guys.
stuff.